morning, guys. I hope you can hear and see me. See my PowerPoint presentation. Let's see who's there. Welcome. Edith is there from France. Very good. Wow, Dr. Rakesh, as usual, very good. You hold the line from India. Tomomi is there. Japan, right? Well, I guess it was Japan. Catherine is there from Scotland. At least it's a Scottish last name. And then, wow. Vanessa is there. Very good. Cool. Yeah, from Australia. Onkar, very good. Thank you for tuning in. Good morning, Edith. Yeah, from San Diego. Wow, you guys are all over the world. That is quite something. Okay, from Romania, Christian. Very good. Thanks for tuning in. Cool. Very good. From Yellowstone National Park, Cynthia. Wow, this is in, should be Australia, right? Oh, don't get me wrong, okay. Should be Australia. Yellowstone. No, it's in the US. Help me out there, yeah. Yellowstone National Park. Beautiful. Let me find that out. Otherwise, I'm embarrassing myself. Venice Beach. Tony, thanks for tuning in. Okay, now I have to check where the Yellowstone National Park is. If you guys don't tell me, then let me see. Yellowstone National Park is in, because this can't be. Where do we have Yellowstone National? Oh, there you go. Yeah, it's definitely in the US. Okay, it's Wyoming. Wow, cool. I'd like to go there. Cool. A few Indians probably still alive there, right? Japan, yeah, Tomomi. I was right. Perfect, yeah. Yellowstone, now I also got it. It's in the US. It's in Wyoming. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. I guess we are ready to go. I guess a few will still tune in. You can write any questions in the chat while I'm talking, no problem. I will go through your questions in the flow of the webinar. If you have, any hints, anything, because today we are touching not so much of a, let's say, practical level in terms of that we go with a application example through a module. However, what we do today is we want to look what's the background. Breed is there as well from London. Breed, thanks for tuning in. Nice, cool, very good to have you. I have my Time Buffer shirt on, if you guys can see it. New Time Buffer shirts, there you go. Cool, so let's start. Today we want to go into a background webinar, you could say, and the topic will be the Time Buffer inside Time Buffer, technical background, as well as software, because this is part of technical, it means hardware and software of the information field technology. I know Mihaela is there from Romania. Thank you also. Yeah, nice you tuned in. Very good. We will talk about the technical background, the foundation of how Time Buffer, let's say, why is Time Buffer working the way it works? And why does the hardware look the way it looks? And how did we come about, with the thing, it works the way it works. That is the whole idea. I know there are a few newcomers as well in the webinar, so never mind if I'm not mentioning everyone here of the attendees. Then I welcome everyone today. We have altogether 136 people who registered. Not always everyone comes, obviously, but I think a few are still tuning in right now as I speak. Yes, and so we will go through the topic. For all of you guys who do not know me, my name is Michael. I'm working for Time Buffer since about 2010, and I'm working in the area of customer distribution partner care. We have a few distribution partners in the room. For example, Breed from London. She was, Breed, by the way, you were my first customer abroad from Germany. I remembered because I guess it was more than 10 years ago, or maybe 11 years ago. And, then I came over to London. That was my first trip abroad, over the ocean, so to say. Yeah, nice. And I'm also responsible for training, sales here and there, but more or less, trying to keep up the quality of what Timebuffer is supposed to be communicating to the outside world, right? So what we have today is a little disclaimer, which you quickly have to read through, and Dan is already gone. Now, today we want to talk about how consciousness is a key in the work with Timebuffer, because that is very important. As you know, it's always a point I like to drive home in every webinar from different angles, but that is actually the key point, how to, let's say, explain why Timebuffer comes up with anything substantial, right? Then we want to switch into how does consciousness affect the work with Timebuffer. We want to talk about the hardware components quickly, because few guys of you who are new here might not know how Timebuffer works and what are the hardware components and what do they do and how does it all work in the hardware. Because as you all know, we have a software and a hardware combined system, and therefore we need to look at the hardware, but as well as into the software, which I'm doing later. But before we talk about the software, I want to talk about the 12-dimensional model according to Backgroud. And here I have a few new, let's say, not just realizations, but a few new insights, because there have been a few new discovery regarding Backgroud, and I want to touch on those as well today. And then we want to go into the software. I want to show you a little bit how the structure in the background of the software works, means the stuff you don't see. You know, when you perform an analysis, why are the results coming up the way they come up, and why are not these results coming up? What is the basic background structure? And then we also come to the Gaussian bell curve, or the norm distribution, or the normal distribution, and the golden ratio. These are a few terms you just need to know, and we just need to discuss a few things in regards to working with Timebuffer professionally. Okay, cool. So let's start with consciousness as a key in working with Timebuffer. That is a very, the concept of consciousness, right, is known in science, and specifically in physics, since a very, very, very long time. It's not something new. It's not that quantum physics since 20 years has discovered that consciousness is the root cause of whatever this material creation is all about, right? We sometimes think that since just 250 years, humanity is so sophisticated, and before we all lived kind of in caves and in forests and little villages, and there was no development. However, according to, if you study history, the opposite is the case. We actually come from a very highly developed spiritual background, and where we are right now is quite a low point of our, you could say, spiritual development. However, in previous high cultures, that concept, that consciousness is the root cause of our creation and our reality, was well known, and not just well known, but was also applied in many different areas of life, right? An important part of this concept, as you see, is a force that constantly creates reality, right? And from that constant infinite possibilities, we pick out that one reality which we all perceive as one reality. Give you an example. If we have this webinar right now, all of us, we could have done so many different things. You could have slept in, I could have, just spaced it out. But somehow or other, our group intention was gearing, or was focusing on being online right now at 10 a.m. German time. And because we all made it happen, that's why we all meet in this virtual room. But we create a group field, a collective information field. However, the reality we're perceiving right now, this webinar reality, is the one reality which has manifested in the physical realm of what we see and perceive. But many other millions or infinite realities we could have manifested are not there, because we put our intention and our consciousness and our focus into this one option, right? So therefore, according to our understanding, consciousness is a key role and is to be the connective, the bridge from the field towards our, or is, let's say, the communication bridge from the reality we perceive towards the field. And this is what we want to talk today about. By the way, these fields, and I had this in another webinar, they have a certain nature of an entity sometimes, right? Sometimes they're being described as even kind of living entities, not like you and me with a soul and a body around, but these fields, they do have a certain, certain identity. And because it's been nourished by many similar intentions, therefore these fields become more powerful, and these fields, they can create or can affect the individual fields and make people do something which they might not even be aware of. Give you an example. If you create a group collective field of fear, right? People are willing to sacrifice their freedom in the hope that they will gain some security, for example, right? We have seen this the last 3 years. So these fields we are talking about, these consciousness fields or information fields, they can be used positively and negatively, so to say. The more we become aware of these fields, the more we can use them in our own well-being. And the less we are aware of these fields can be used against our personal well-being. This we have to keep in mind, right? It's not that economy is not using these fields, right? If you are supposed to be buying the latest iPhone, then you'll see this is on every wallpaper, marketing, whatever advertisement. And at a certain point, people think, okay, I have to buy that new iPhone because this is really whatever, the edge of technology. And then there is this collective group, that group field is influencing the individual fields and make them do something which they might not even need. Who needs the latest phone? You know, you can easily work with a phone 5 years old. But, well, there's a certain status, there's a certain prestige, and so on, which needs to be matched. And this is one example. One example, how these collective fields, which have a certain independent identity, can influence an individual field of a person and make him do something which is good for them or not good for them, okay? Good. Max Planck is a very interesting person, and I like this quote because when we talk about consciousness, we cannot go around him. He is really one of the Nobel Prize winners, a bit more than 100 years ago. He says, I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as derivative, which means a byproduct of consciousness, which means like if you have the cause and effect chain, then consciousness is, so to say, the cause and the effect is matter in its different forms. We cannot get behind consciousness. Everything that we talk about, everything that we regard as existing, postulates consciousness. So consciousness is really the root of where we are. And when we talk about this, I mean, give you one example. Every pupil in school learns that we are originating from monkeys, somewhere from Africa, so many millions of years ago, right? And before that, you had the Big Bang, so many millions of years ago. And by this random connection of certain molecules, somehow or other, miraculously, magically, now here we are, fully, grown up human body with feelings and everything, perception, senses, right? So what is this? This is a materialistic scientific worldview that consciousness comes from matter, right? Because at the beginning was a Big Bang, and then we have all this evolution, whatever. And then at a certain point, consciousness pops in. You could say, if the molecules in the way they connect are complex enough, consciousness would pop in and would kind of take over. And then you have consciousness connected to matter. This is a very wrong concept of life. And that's what everyone learns in school and university since maybe 150 years only. However, if we go back to what I told in the beginning, that we come from high civilized and evolved cultures, plus if we take into account what quantum physics tells us, plus if we take into account what all spiritual revealed scriptures around the world are telling us, then this is sheer nonsense, because actually consciousness postulates, right? Like everything we exist postulates consciousness, means consciousness was first. And from consciousness, from a living, intentional impulse, whatever material reality manifested. So consciousness is the cause, and matter is the response, is the effect, and not the other way around. Right? It seems simple, but it is a very crucial point, which if we apply this point in our daily dealings, our whole reality view is actually changing, right? And we see how wrong and how much we are being materialized, and how much we are being put into illusion in regards of who we are and where we come from, right? The worldview, the history view, the view of who I am is being very strongly manipulated and being reduced into kind of a lump of matter, you know? Basically, we are like two-legged animals who are just a little more evolved than monkeys. But what is this nonsense, right? It doesn't mean that the animals or monkeys are bad, but we have to understand that consciousness comes first. And consciousness is infinite, which means it has no beginning, which means we as beings, as spiritual beings, we have no beginning or no end. Even though the body comes to an end at a certain point, however, we, as the soul existing within the body, is eternal. And that changes a lot in our daily beings. Good. How does Timebuffer apply that? Timebuffer is analyzing the information field, you could say, and on different levels is aiming to restore a holistic well-being on the material level, on the psychological level, on the karmic level, on the spiritual level. And then vice versa, the system sends back certain corrections. You could say, in the field we have vibration patterns. There's nothing stiff, you know. We don't have like solid matter, you know, like the spoon. It's not like, but there are vibration fields. So that spoon within the information field would actually be a field of vibration, which is flexible, which is moving, which is swinging, which is vibrating. And this field, you can change that spoon on the gross physical level by bending it. However, you can also change a form within the information field, and by changing the vibration pattern of a certain whatever spoon or a certain human being. And if all the parameters are right, then this change also manifests within the physical reality. It's not that it always manifests according to our desire. So even if I say I want to bend that spoon with Timebuffer in the information field, that doesn't necessarily mean that the spoon bends, because there are certain laws which are applying if you work with Timebuffer, and one law is that things have to be practically relevant, right? What is the relevance if you want to bend that spoon, right? There is a relevance, however, if somebody has a disbalance or a problem or a challenge in life, and maybe it's a situation about life and death, that relevance has a different importance within the field and produces different relevant results. And changes are definitely more tangible and perceivable, right? So, how you explain Timebuffer, right? Sometimes it's a good way to explain it in terms of digital or homeopathic, a digital or a homeopathic remedy, or a digital homeopathic homeopathic approach, right? Because you see this, you can compare it to an intake of a homeopathic remedy. In both cases, there is no physical or biochemical process going on, because you just eat a little sugar pill or you just take a few drops of water. However, the body is provided with the sufficient information to resolve a certain challenge. And it's not always working perfectly in the sense of school medicine. I was just about to show you a pill I have here. Let's say if you take a painkiller, you know that kicks in half an hour and will be there for and will, let's say, reduce the pain for 4 hours, more or less. However, if you use a homeopathic painkiller, you could say, right, then you leave the body a certain degree of freedom to decide when, how strong, and how long this digital homeopathic, let's say painkiller, is supposed to be working, right? You cannot say it has to be working now from till and in that strength, but you basically give the body the information and then you leave the body the freedom to say, now you can, according to the self-harmonization abilities, you can work with it and apply it to the best possible way, right? Because we have many layers which need to be addressed. For example, the karmic frame. Someone might not be right now capable of becoming better in a certain situation because karma might not allow it, right? And therefore, the karmic frame or borders, limitations are taken into account when you work with Time River in terms of a digital homeopathic approach. Time River also is a causal system. Like I was talking in the beginning about cause and effect chains, which we are very much used to in the physical world we live. I do something and then this happens, and I do it again and then this happens again, right? This is the way of how we are used to perceiving our reality. However, Time River is not working in this limitation, you could even say. Time River works on different levels. If you send an impulse into the field, you would not necessarily know how the response will be shown in the physical reality of a client. It might be that whatever problem the client has is resolved the way we think in terms of cause and effect chain. However, it might also be that the problem will be resolved fully unexpected and different of how we are used to see a holistic well-being process, right? Like I can give you an example. Let's say someone is depressed, or someone is depressed is even hard. Someone is not feeling, okay, someone is depressed. So then you do something with Time River, you create a harmonization list, you send it into the field, and somehow or other that person is losing his partner. So then you would say, why is the person losing the partner? We were supposed to be working on the emotional and mental level and the well-being on that, in that area, but here the person loses his or her partner. Why? Because that relationship might have been a toxic relationship, so that the client actually, that depressed state was a response to the partnership he had. So Time River working on the weakest level would first try to harmonize the partnership, the relationship, and therefore that would maybe fall apart before the direct emotional well-being could be addressed, right? So that is the idea. But we are working in this world of double-blind study and reproducible results because we are kind of trained to look at reality in this way, right? Especially when we come from a conventional medical approach, then we always have this, things need to be reproducible and you need to test this in a certain, border, in a certain limitation, and that needs to be reproducible again and again and again, and always the same effect has to come out. Sometimes this is good. I'm not saying that is bad, because you need that kind of approach in some cases. However, with many different challenges people have these days, this approach is not working, and we have to try to think outside of the box. And specifically, if we work with time waver, we have to at least adopt that, thinking of the box view into the world, that results with time waver, for example, are not reproducible, right? Due to the observer effect. If you do one analysis, this is the one real shot, and there is no other shot with this intention in this constellation. It's one shot only, which means you have to properly prepare yourself so that this one shot is really, for you and for the client in terms of communicating the results, the best possible shot, right? You cannot say, oh, I don't like the results, let me do it again. Same focus, same databases. That won't work, because that field you have created within that analysis constellation is gone, has been collapsed. And the only thing you can do is to create a new field from a new angle, with a new intention, with a new perspective, right? So what I'm saying is we have to, if you want to work with time waver professionally, we have to look at the world a little bit differently, right? And a few rules we are used to are not applying. And one, for example, is this cause and effect chain, that we want to have a certain effect if we just stimulate or change a certain cause, right? That is important. So time waver is a quantum physical device. Now we're zooming into time waver. It's an interface, you could say, which supports the user's consciousness in communicating with their psychological and material content or environment, right? So it creates an interface. It creates a communication bridge into that realm to find results on many different levels, even on the karmic level, even on the spiritual purpose level, even on emotional and mental level, on the material, on the environmental level, right? Consciousness has the primary importance, and the quality of the applied system is of secondary importance. Again, consciousness first, and the system is secondary, because you are most important. If you work with time waver, it's not that the system all of a sudden becomes more important. So more important is the willingness of the individual to let's say, I give you an example. If I have this microphone from the webinar, right? The technical background of how good the quality of the hardware is, and that is secondary. Primary is me talking to you, or you talking to me, is the information flow that we connect on a human-like level, even though it's in a virtual room, but the conveying of information is primary. The hardware is secondary. So even if I would have a smaller microphone, which would not have the quality of that one, then, and you would maybe hear me a little less, nice and round and deep and whatever, the full spectrum of my voice, you would still be satisfied if the information I convey to you are of importance and relevant in your life. In the same way, when we work with time waver, it's not the system, it's always you, the user, working with a client. The system is as good as the person sitting in front of it. And the clients are basically buying or paying you, but not the system. So therefore, it's always good to not, hide behind the system. In some way, it's good to have something written black on white, because it's a good reflection area for clients to see where they stand, because sometimes they're not trusting therapists or doctors even, or coaches, because they say, like, you can tell me a lot, but now it's written black on white, so you can refer to the what time waver came up as an analysis list. However, you are more important, right? You are more important. So now, because now we are in this transhumanism and artificial intelligence age, we are actually going in right now. right? So, of course, with computers and stuff, we can process certain information way quicker. So the quantity of what we can do and the time in which we can do so, this, of course, a computer might be doing even in a way quicker and better and more precise without so many mistakes. However, there's a big but. The but is that this ratio, this rational approach of processing information, a human being can combine with compassion. A human being can combine with emotions. A human being can combine with love, with values, with traditions, and so on and forth. And that a technical solution will not be able to do. So therefore, that human part of us as Timewave users, that is most important. And then we use the technical part secondary in order to, let's say, process certain things, or use it for these for the quick process of the information. Or for example, with Timewave, you set up the system that a certain harmonization list is being sent for the next 4 weeks in a certain sending interval. But that you give up to Timewave. However, the way you explain the results to Timewave, the way you live as an example for your clients, that is something you have to do as a human being. And this a computer will never be able to copy. And this artificial intelligence or Timewave will not take away. Because Timewave is just working down certain things you as a human being set up and prepare. Right? Like this. So the influence of the applied quantum physical system on the quality of the work with the system is highly dependent on the importance to the user gives to it. Right? That is exactly the idea. And here, in that regard, we can also say the more urgent the matter is, the better the results. Right? Like if it's about a situation about life and death, the results will be even more precise, will be accordingly, because there is an urgency. It is pressing. It needs to be resolved. And the higher the need of the situation to be balanced again, the more precise the results of Timewave are. What is also very important is trust, right? If you have clients which are not trusting you or the system or the idea or the philosophy or whatever, you can do whatever you like. There will not be these profound synchronicities between the client's reality and what Timewave comes up with. A person who's, so there you go. Why a person who is tired, right? Let's say, when I come back to this technical part, right? If the information I convey to you in the webinar is of relevance, you are still watching. However, if what I tell you is not very important for your life, then even the slightest little technical problems might you even leave the webinar. Then all of a sudden, the technical part is becoming even, again, more important than the content which is being conveyed. Timewave, the quality of the device and the construction versus one's own mental ability. Timewave is an extension of your own intuition. That is very important. And Timewave helps you basically to come back to your own abilities, to recover your own abilities, right? It should not be that we are dependent on tech, on devices, on gadgets. It should be the other way around. If we use certain gadgets and devices or Timewave, they should depend on us. It should depend on us. It should do according to what we want as an outcome. These days, we are usually quite dependent on whatever smartphones and this and that. We don't even know really where to go without whatever Google Maps, right? There was a time when I was young, we used to have normal paper maps, and you would look it up if you don't know, but you would mainly use your intuition because you would know, I have to go approximately this direction, and somehow you would find the way, and there would be some signs, and you would be guided to the right destination. These days, this ability to trust your own inner compass, for example, is mainly lost because we just type in, bring me there, and then somehow or other, every little detail is being arranged. Not that this is always bad, right? I'm not saying it's not a black and white story, but we should watch out that our own personal abilities are not being, reduced to zero just because we have an external technical solution. In the same way, if you work with Time Waver, do not reduce your own intuition. Do not reduce your own inner connection, your personal spiritual compass, or your divine connection to whatever higher realms or spiritual dimensions. This is of utmost importance, and Time Waver should actually bring you back to let's say, connect to your own abilities. That's the aim. So that you at a certain point might not even all the time have to use Time Waver. Right? That doesn't mean Time Waver becomes obsolete, because it can still, certain processing jobs can be done with Time Waver more effectively. However, in some situations, you might know the answer already, whether you ask Time Waver or not. You know what I mean? That is the idea. So we can trust in our own abilities and in our own qualities. Yeah, to a certain extent, this is an outsource of consciousness. If you have the smartphone, we also kind of, it's not a living entity which is working independently. Maybe sometimes it can if it's remotely controlled. But, the way I set up my smartphone is according to my structure, my inner mental structure. If I would give this to someone else, they would have a hard time to operate it, not just because of the fingerprint and stuff and the security stuff, but also the way, things are being structured and how I use things and what I use. It is, to some extent, an extension of my consciousness. I gave up a certain part of my consciousness into it so that it processes and is doing things for me, depending on my consciousness. Not the other way around. It's not that my consciousness, it's not that I'm depending on how this thing is working. That we should watch out. That is exactly my idea. So the more we come into this artificial intelligence age, the more we have to watch out that these personal abilities are not taken away from us. Right? We should carefully check, what do we outsource? What responsible do we really give away, and what do we keep with us? I am saying at a certain point, in a couple of years from now, a human work will be very high priced, will be very expensive, because most of the work will be done by robots and whatever artificial intelligence stuff. So if a human is doing a work for someone, that will be at a certain point will be special. Now we think like, yeah, computers are better and robots are better. They can do the work way better than humans. But at a certain point, if a human is doing a certain job, that will be a speciality. That will be still a very special, high-priced service. There will come a time, mark my words, like this. So now, Time Waver hardware and software. We have two hardware components. The light quantum resonator, which is the upper tray, is a photon laser, which is shooting more than 4 million photons per second onto a half-transparent mirror. The mirror is really an angle of 45 degrees. So the chance that the light quantum is being, because it's half transparent, the chance that it goes through is 50%, and the chance it is going to be reflected is another 50% chance. So you could say, in one way, we call it a random vacuum. It's just, in one way, it is random. It's a 50-50 chance. So you could say, God knows, who knows? However, from the research and from the experience, is if you have a certain intention, if you, let's say, if you have a conscious approach, you break that random pattern of the distribution of these photons. Because as you see, if the photon gets through, it's being detected as a 1. If it's being reflected, it's being detected as a 0. So we create a so-called binary code of zeros and ones, like the computer language we know, right? And a 1 is a yes, and a 0 is a no. So you have certain yes and no's and yes and no's. And in the background, it's being connected to the databases. And whether or not this database entry comes up is depending on how many yes there are per second or per millisecond, right? So, and the more ones you have, the higher the relevance in the positive. So if you just have ones, let's say if all the photons can get reflected, you would have plus 100% relevance on the result. And the other way around, if they all go through, then you have all zeros, then that will go into negative relevance, minus 100%. And whatever is in between, right? So that is the idea. So this is directly connected to relevance and shows up at the end from minus 100% to plus 100%, right? Because the hardware is directly connected to the software. Let's say these photons, the way they work, are connected to the database entries, and they bring this result up or that result. Let's say one database entry is being taken out, a certain amount of photons are being shot on this half-transparent mirror. Then you see how many zeros and ones, yes and no's, and therefore you have a relevance distribution according to the Gaussian curve bell or the normal distribution, whether or not this entry is in the background minus 100% or in the foreground plus 100% relevant, right? So the same is applying to the other part of the hardware, which we call the noise generators. Here, the process is working on the basis of electrons. And there we have two hardware components, two noise generators, which is the lower left and the lower right tray of the timer of hardware. And the one noise generator is connected to the person, to the client, or to the, let's say, company, whatever is the active client. And the second noise generator here is connected again to the databases. And then you have what we call a vibration comparison or an oscillation comparison, which means the idea is how are these vibration or sine curves overlapping, right? Like, look, if these sine curves are overlapping just one-on-one, if they're fully synchronized, you have a plus 100 relevance. And if these sine curves are fully opposite, like, one is going up and the other one is going down, so they're not at all synchronized, you have a minus 100% relevance and everything in between, right? So this comparison of how the vibration patterns are is being done on an electronic base with the two noise generators, right? And the more they overlap, the higher the relevance in terms of positive, and the more they fully not overlap, the more the result will go into minus relevance, minus 100%, right? So, and because this is a very sensitive process, we have shielded those hardware components with what we call a so-called cozy ref mirror, which is a very solid aluminum cylinder, which are shielding these hardware components so that whatever comes in as a interference frequency, such as Wi-Fi or EMF, is not influencing the quality of the signal. That is important, right? So you see the case of the hardware, of the time of a hardware, is a solid aluminum case in itself, which is already a shield from whatever is surrounding it, and is a very thick case. However, these two cozy ref mirrors are specifically placed around those two noise generators to, on top of it, provide a very clean signal. So therefore you have these two processes, and these two processes are of a very are of importance. So now the background structure is what we call the 12-dimensional model of Backgroud. He was a German physicist, and all of it in the 1950s. And he explains basically the whole of creation within this 12 dimensions. He even explained, to some extent, God. However, maybe there's no way really to explain God in a 12th dimension, but he tried to make sense of the spiritual and physical reality and put it into this structure. There is even a 0 dimension, which you don't have here. The 0 dimension is the full still stand. There is nothing, no movement of nothing. Then when we put more energy into the system, the higher the vibration goes, we have the dimension 1, 2, 3, which are, the spatial dimensions, X, Y, Z. Therefore, we don't have just a point or a line, but we have a 3-dimensional space, whatever objects. If you add some energy, we come up with a 4th dimension, which is time. Right? So now, this is actually what we call the physical reality, space and time. And because we see whatever form we have may it be 3-dimensional or 2-dimensional, but they are defined by a certain time frame. Things come into existence and things, again, leave. Like this body is there for a couple of years and then it's gone again. So whatever object we have is defined or limited by the 4th dimension, which is time. So now the 5th dimension is actually is the energetic journey, you could say, through time in right now here. Time is not relevant anymore. It's above time. I give you one example. If you have family, it's kind of the astral level. If you do family constellation work, according to Hellinger, then you have one who has a problem, and then you have these participants, and they represent certain family members. And all of a sudden, when you do that constellation, then the participant who is representing, let's say, the father of the client is now acting as the father, miraculously. Time and space is gone because it's actually not the father. However, that person steps into the field of the father and somehow or other acts as the father and resolves certain traumas which might have been created in the childhood. Right? So that's the 5th dimension, the astral level, where we actually in one way transcend time and space. And one good example is this family constellation. The 6th level is the mental level. This is related to purpose and reason, right? It is that everything is possible in the here and now. Right? This is a very high meditative state. The 7th level is then the dimension. The 7th dimension is then the transition from the individual to the collective field. We are going away from this individual me and mine zone into the collective zone. You could say there is a swarm intelligence, right? Like even if birds are flying in a certain flock, right? They have perfect synchronized movement. So why? It's not that they all think of, okay, I have to go a little bit more left and right, but they're actually connected to this group field and they regain the information, you could say, from the D7 level, right? There are no forms, right? And then the D8 as well, right? This is becoming even stronger. Then there are, for example, the Maharishi effect is taking place there. That a group of people are meditating, and that group of people, because they have the same approach, the same quantum meditation, you could say, this has an effect to a larger field of, let's say, a city. They did it in the 1960s in Washington, D.C., that all of a sudden the crime rate would go down when in a 4 million people city, when 250 people would meditate, right? That's the idea. And then the D9 level is the universal consciousness level, right? Then we even leave the level of information field. It's not these fields who are connected and group fields and the individual fields. We leave that level. Here we come to the level of the soul. This is when you do, for example, a DMT experience, an LSD experience. I'm not promoting it now, but just for all of you who have maybe done that, right? You are not experiencing your body anymore. You're experiencing your soul being. That could be there. So it's the essence of our being, right? No duality. And then the D10 is you could say the all one consciousness in one way. Like you feel like I'm connected to everything and everyone, right? There's no me and mine and there's a limit to something. However, even higher, the D11 is the divine will. So now God as a person comes into play, according to Backgroud. The divine will. There is a purpose. There's an intention of the Creator. Wonders do happen there in this realm, right? Spontaneous healing things happen there. When Jesus is walking over the lake and stuff, this is happening on this level. And then the D12 is the highest level according to Backgroud, which is very hard to put in words, obviously. However, that is the pure realm where you have a, let's say, loving relationship with the Creator, with God, in a very individual setting. Right? So whatever we think, whatever we feel, whatever we say is being stored in that information field. Nothing gets lost. It's like a huge hard disk. Everything is being recorded, you could say. Therefore, we have to watch. What do I think? What do I say? What do I do? Everything has an effect. And everything is being stored in the field, and somehow, not always everything at a certain time, but things have a response. If I think a certain way for a long time, my reality, my physical reality changes. If I feel a certain way for a long time, my physical reality changes. So everything is basically already kind of in the field. So now if someone invents a new, whatever time wafer, is it really the person's, is it really Markus Schmieke who has come up with the system? Or who gets the credit of these inventions? Or was that information already there? And then a certain person just connects to the field and has or gets the ability to download a certain information to manifest something within the reality we know. In the Bhagavad Gita, this is nicely being explained, where Krishna tells to Arjuna in the 15th chapter of verse 15, he says, I'm seated in everyone's heart. For me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. These three things. So there is a divine connection right there. So, we might be coming up with a certain idea or invention, but it's actually not us. We are not the one who invent something. We might have access to a certain field of information, and because we are qualified for it, we get access to it, or we even are allowed to have the ability to connect to it, right? Because in the next chapter, he says, I'm the taste of water, the light of the sun and the moon, the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras, and the sound in the ether, and I'm the ability in man. So even the ability to process information, to download information, to make use of certain information, even that is a God-given ability. So therefore, we cannot really be so much proud of, or we cannot be so much independently proud of what we have gained or we have invented. It all has its root in the 12th dimension, in the top dimension. Remember, the 11th and 12th dimension is the divine will, is the divine purpose, because there is a there's a divine structure of, behind the things we see. Therefore, there is a certain ability for people to wake up in the time we live right now. Therefore, there is a certain ability for people to process divine knowledge and communicate about it, for example. And there are some other times it's not possible. I remember when I became a vegetarian in 2000, even before in 1998, if you say that you are a vegetarian, they almost crucified you. It's like, how dare you not even thinking of not eating meat? How will you survive? It's impossible. I had discussions with my parents and relatives, and I thought, like, I can't. How is it possible? Now, if you talk about being a vegetarian, it's the most normal thing in the world. Even in Berlin, you have one restaurant after the other, even vegan restaurants. There's no meat being processed. So, right, there's a certain time when things are easier to live, easier to process, easier to access. And there is another time where things are a little more difficult, covered, where there's a thick layer of, let's say, illusion on the soul. And so there are different times. This is just what I want to say. And these different times, these different periods are according to a divine master plan, which is going on in the background. So now, the Gaussian curve is from minus 100% to plus 100%. We call it from rigidity to chaos, or from background to foreground, from active to passive, from conscious to unconscious. However, all the results are being displayed in time according to this normal distribution, right? And that is the mathematical background structure of the whole software. There has to be some software. There has to be some structure, right? And there has to be some, let's say, something time is working along. And this is the structure. And so now if we go to the software, I want to show you now. That is the idea. So now if we go to the software and we have a result, I just want to show you something from a very small database, like this one, right? If I have 10, I take all the results from, or let's say, limiting beliefs. There you go, 33. I take all of them, right? Just as an example, because I want to show you the background structure. It goes very quick. So look, you have the first ones are plus, 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 and at a certain point, it goes from plus to minus. See, 19 to 20. We have all together 32 results. And approximately in the middle, it breaks from plus to minus. Because the norm distribution means all the 33 entries of that database are being thrown over that normal distribution and will be somewhere located along that curve, right? And you can see if your time buffer is working fine, if you have something up in the positive and approximately the same amount of entries in the negative. That means your hardware is working fine. If, for example, you just have positive relevances, then something is wrong, provided you take all the entries from one database. So now, of course, if I take from the same database just 4, then what will be the result? They will mostly, it will be the highest relevances, right? And you see, there are no like 60%, there are no like 50%, there are no like 30 plus or minus, because time buffer is cutting the lower relevances, plus or minus, and it's just showing you the highest ones, right? And they should also be kind of in a norm distribution, which means you should have at least a couple of negatives and a couple of positives, right? Let me do it again, just so that you see, right? Like this. You see 2 minus, 2 plus, norm distribution. Like this is the tip, the peak of the, here. This is the peak of the, 1 second, of the Gaussian bell curve. Where do I have it? Now, I can't show you right now. It's the peak of the Gaussian bell curve. You know, you just have this highest relevances, plus and minus, being shown here. Right? So the highest is 88 or minus 86%. So now the idea is, because this mathematical structure has some limitations, and you should know that if you take a smaller database, such as whatever new targets and resolutions, and you will take maybe a larger database, such as, let me see, like the Bhagavad Gita verses, right? Like these ones, these two. And if I do it like this, I will have 4 from this and 4 from that, right? But because if I go on combined databases and I want to have 4 results from both, then usually time refers taking more from the larger database in quantity than from the smaller database. So the result will be that they most probably have 4 Bhagavad Gita verses. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Because in quantity, the Bhagavad Gita database is larger, 654, and new targets and resolutions are just 10. Because all together we have 664 results, and I throw them over the normal distribution. And if I just want to have 4, obviously the highest ones will be shown. And because in quantity the Bhagavad Gita has more, therefore the possibility that higher relevances come from a larger databases is higher than from a smaller one. Right? It's the same structure in the background. So what I need to do is, in order to kind of normalize this, you have this normalize function where these two quantitatively different databases are being equally balanced in the importance. And then the results will be that you sometimes, let me see, that you sometimes have, one moment. It's not happening now, but it should actually be that you have equally distributed. 1 second. Normalizing. Okay, one more time. Yeah, let me take 8. Normalizing. Yeah, there you go. No, I just didn't have enough. See, there's 1 from new targets and resolutions, and at least 1. Okay. That's interesting. Let me do it one more time, because it should be kind of equal. That's the idea. Okay, I'll check about this. There's 1, 2. Okay, but the idea is, yeah, and it works right now. I have a bit of a different version. You see, I have 1253. So there's a little bit of differences in how the software works and the hardware, but if you click on normalize, you should have kind of equal from new targets and resolutions and Bhagavad Gita. Try that at home and let me know. Now, yeah. Try that at home and let me know if that works for you. It would be interesting. A smaller database and a larger database. And then combine the databases, take whatever, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, normalize, and then perform an analysis. And then you should have a couple of those from the smaller in and a couple of those from the larger one in. Yeah, there are some in, but not as many. And I will find out why. By the way, a last thing I want to show you, if you want to check whether your hardware is working, you press the control key on your keyboard, and then you go in options with a mouse. And then there is a certain hardware test here, right? And this hardware test, basically, you can click on, this is in options, you can check whether your hardware and your software is working properly. You go on the LQR, which you see, which is the light quantum resonator. And you see, it should be a normal distribution. Norm distribution, see? From minus 100% to plus 100%. It should be sort of a norm distribution. Few can come out, that is normal, and the same with noise. So the same as with noise. You see, it should also be a norm distribution, right? And if there's a norm distribution, then your hardware is working properly. Try that as well. If there is a distribution more going to the left or to the right, then you know something is with your hardware not properly working. So I just wanted to check this, and that actually works. So that is because of my... the hardware test function is if you go and control your keyboard, and then you click on options, then this one pops up. First control, and then, okay? With a pressed control key, you click on options, and then you can check, right? Then it should be there. You all have it. Cool. So guys, that's it for today. We have done something. We have covered some ground. It was a bit technical, it was a bit theoretical, but I hope I could touch a few points which are relevant in how you work with Time Buffer, because these webinars are mainly there to help understand how to become professional with Time Buffer in the way of producing results which are really relevant for you and your clients. Therefore, sometimes I focus on these webinars. The next webinars will be, again, practical application examples. We go through modules and they create certain templates. This will be there, but today's webinar was mainly focusing on how to use Time Buffer in the first place properly, to prepare yourself, to set up the system in the right way so that the results will actually be according to the liking, according to your liking. So thank you so much. I wish you a wonderful remaining day, guys. 5 minutes over time. I see you in the next webinar, I guess.